And now I think people are much more aware of it, which is like we're bringing light into the dark. We're becoming aware of the things that we have to solve. And hopefully it's making people more inspired to actually take action, to invest in these life-changing, brain-changing tools that your child is going to have with them to take with them for life. And one thing that I want to share about, like, well, is 4 too young, or is 6 too young, or will my kid even like keep doing it if they're 8? The thing is, the younger you can teach them, kids are already in it's almost a trance state. They're in actually like an alpha theta state of consciousness until they're 8 years old. And there's a big shift that happens around 7 to 8 years old. And so if you can teach your child before then, it's almost like they get to keep that connection to that everythingness, to that totality, to what I would call cosmic consciousness. It's like they get to bring that with them through their adolescence and into adulthood. And I really think that as parents, we want to keep our children tethered to that source energy.
Welcome to the Soaring Child Podcast, where parents of children with ADHD learn tips and tricks to help their child soar at home, at school, and in life. We feature interviews with experts, medical professionals, and parents just like you who are learning how to reduce ADHD symptoms using food and other natural strategies. Because children with ADHD deserve to soar just like every other child. I'm your host, Dana Kay. Hello, parents. This is Dana Kay here with another edition of the Soaring Child Podcast. This week's episode is an absolute cracker. I'm not sure if that's an Aussie slang saying or if you know what I mean. Anyway, it's going to be amazing. We are exploring stress and the negative impacts it can have on children's brain and their behavior. And the most important part, what to actually do about it. My guest is the founder of Ziva and has taught the Ziva technique to over 40,000 people. Her best-selling book, Stressless, Accomplish More, debuted at number 7 out of all books on Amazon and has been translated into 12 languages. In 2021, she launched Ziva Kids, the first meditation course of its kind for kids aged 4 to 14. Her work has been featured by the New York Times, Good Morning America, The Today Show, Vogue, and ABC. She has been named one of the top 100 women in wellness to watch and has taught at Apple, Google, and Harvard Business School. Now it is time to welcome Emily Fletcher to the Soaring Child. Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. I love the name of your podcast. Like, who doesn't want their child to soar?
I know. And that's why I chose it, because at the end of the day, that is what all of us parents want to achieve. I honestly couldn't wait to have you as a guest on the podcast. I know your program has helped both of my boys so much, and I haven't actually told you that. So,
how old are your boys?
My boys are currently 12 and 8. So
perfect.
Teaching 12 and 8-year-olds to meditate is not an easy thing, but your program did it so well. So I'm really, really appreciative of that.
That makes me so happy. And I would say it's really tough, especially if you're their parent. But if you're not their parent and you've got a cool, really fun puppet helping you, then it can be a lot easier.
A lot easier. Now, with all the families that I work with, stress is a big problem. And I think it's a big problem out there in the world today, especially what we've been through recently. And what most parents actually don't realize is that it's a big driver for inflammation in our kiddos' body and brain, and their behavior is affected. And they really need to learn different practices to be able to help reduce that inflammation. And one of those is what we're going to talk about today. And, you are the expert here, and I want you to share all of that knowledge with everyone about why meditation, why is it so important, especially for our kids, and why now?
Well, like you said, meditation actually can really reduce inflammation. And I think so many people think of meditation right now as like a luxury item or like a bubble bath or a pedicure, where it's like, oh, when I have some extra time, I'll get around to that foo-foo hippy dippy meditation. Or even if people are convinced on the science, of which there is thousands of peer-reviewed studies now talking about the scientifically proven mental, physical, emotional, mental health benefits of this practice. And yet still people think, well, when I have more time, or like, that's cute, but I can't meditate. I don't have time. I'm too busy. So what I really want people to understand is that meditation is not just changing our mental state. It does that for sure. But meditation is actually changing you on a physiological level as well. Because if you think about it, your brain is responsible for printing every single cell in your body. It is also responsible for making every single decision in your life. And so if you have the brain of stress, then you are going to have a body of stress. You are going to make stress-based decisions. And especially for our kids, their prefrontal cortex is not totally online yet. It's not totally developed until well into our 20s. So we have to act as that prefrontal cortex for our child. We have to act as their executive function, their decision-making matrix, oftentimes helping them to downregulate. Now, this is really tricky if we ourselves as adults and as parents do not have the ability to downregulate. If we ourselves are swimming in stress and anxiety and overwhelm and depression and rage, it's like, I wonder why my kid is acting out. It's like, well, I have a suggestion. Maybe we could have just take the overall anxiety levels of the house down, because our kids are so permeable. They're so reactive to our emotional and physiological states. But to answer your question, this practice is one of the single fastest ways I know to decrease inflammation in the body, because inflammation can be very much exacerbated by stress. So when we launch into fight or flight, right, which is what stress is, the body floods with adrenaline and cortisol, which are stress hormones, which are actually acidic in nature. And it's that acidity in the body that up levels that baseline level of inflammation. And if your baseline level of inflammation is high, then you are more susceptible to chronic disease, to degenerative disease, to behavior issues. And, and you're the expert on this, but it can also make regulation of ADHD harder, because the body is always in this preparatory fight or flight state.
You are 100% right there. Our kiddos are acting in a constant state of flight or fight. And I love that you talked about the prefrontal cortex, because kids with ADHD generally are delayed in their development of the prefrontal cortex as well. And a lot of them have that gut-brain connection disconnect. And so everything that we can do to help that is a plus for sure.
And so on that gut brain connection, so meditation is not just clearing the mind. It is not just sitting still. And for those parents listening and thinking I could never get my kid to meditate, I'm just going to skip to the next episode. Please hear me when I say that it is possible. We have many hundreds of kids who've moved through Ziva Kids and not only do it, but they love it and they crave it and they look forward to it. But that's because we've made it really fun. So know that it is possible. But inside of Ziva Kids, we teach kids and parents not only mental techniques, but also breath work. We start with breath work because it's a really fast and really effective way to create a state change in adults and certainly in children. But a beautiful byproduct of that is that when you do something called, we call it the belly balloon breath, is how we teach it to kids, but it's actually a vagal tone breathing. And the vagus nerve is the superhighway between your brain and body.
Yes.
And so when we regulate this and we do this belly balloon breathing, we're actually strengthening the connection between the gut and the brain. And we know it's not just a one-way communication. It's not just the brain talking to the gut. It's not just the gut talking to the brain. They are talking to each other. So if your gut is off, which happens when we get stressed, if your brain is off, it's all talking to each other. So we really want that superhighway to be paved, to be strong, and to be regulated so that our body and brain can be connected and in harmony with each other instead of fighting with each other.
Oh, I mean, Emily, you have said so many things that I actually wasn't even aware of. And I am one of those people that say, oh, well, I don't have time to meditate. I'm gonna do that tomorrow when I have time, and I never do. But just your passion and the way that you've explained it, I'm actually going to go off here now after the podcast and really put the time effort, because when I'm stressed, my kids are stressed. And when they're stressed, no one in the family is happy. So I'd like
to know, I'm curious, what inspired you to get your kids to start Ziva Kids before you did Ziva Online, just out of curiosity?
So I work with kids with ADHD. I know that stress is a huge component of it. And I know that meditation works. But I always put my kids before I put my own needs. And so
I'm sure everyone can relate to that. I get that. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I'm so glad that we're talking, and thank you for your honesty and vulnerability. And I just want to like highlight this because I know that you're not alone. And so I just want to give you a million one gold stars for taking such good care of your kids and taking such good care of all of our kids. And two, give you a big fat permission slip to fill up your own cup first, right? Because as we know it intellectually, but just to remind you in your heart, none of us can pour from an empty cup. And really, truly, like the happier you are, the more blissful you are, the more rested and filled with joy and creativity that you are, the more you're going to have to give to your children. And I find, if you think about the Suzuki method, like in violin, you actually, the child can't pick up the violin until the parent can play at least one song. And I like this idea for meditation as well, because we can, like in Ziva Kids, we're training kids to be superheroes, right? And so we train the parents on how to be sidekicks. And so it's like, you're just going to be such a better sidekick on your kids' superhero training if you yourself have been through something similar. And also your whole life gets better. Your sleep gets better, your sex gets better, your immune system gets stronger, you start making more money. It's just like everything gets more awesome.
Now, just this chat in itself, I don't know how it can't inspire all of those listeners out there. Your energy and your passion for this is, it's making me just want to go off and meditate, because you can see it. Everything that you're talking about, all the benefits that you're talking about, you are emulating in your voice and the way that you're talking about this, and it really is inspiring. Now, I know a lot of families out there think, okay, well, it's all good and well that you can say, oh, go and teach your kids how to meditate, but how do they get their children, curious about the topic, because it is pretty foreign to most people.
Yeah. So I would say like the last thing I want to do is make parents feel like they have to be meditation police or meditation salespeople. So what I recommend is if you go to zivameditation.com/kids, there's actually like a free video there, and it's me and Z Bunny. So I worked for 2 years on developing this program with folks from Sesame Street and actually child psychologists from Harvard. And so it would every word, every sentence, every paragraph, every imagery that we use, like all of this is vetted and tested by doctors, psychologists, kids. And the main thing that I wanted with this is that it had to be entertaining, right? So I used to be on Broadway. I was on Broadway for 10 years. I was singing and dancing and acting my whole life. And I brought all of that, like all of that joy, all of that entertainment, all of that fun, all that humor into this course. And like, kids, you make one fart joke and kids are your friend, your best friend for life.
They sure are.
So it's like, I like to think that I'm, fun and entertaining, but really the star of the show is my co-star Z Bunny. And Z Bunny is this beautiful puppet who we made with the Sesame Street folks. And Z Bunny's training to be a superhero. And so every day he comes along with a challenge and he feels some big emotions. We call them the stormies, right? And so as he's facing his sad stormies or his mad stormies or his scared stormies, he comes to me, who's his friend, and he shares what's going on. And I teach him some tools to unlock the superpowers that are already inside of him. And each day he gets a new badge. And then by the end of the 7-day training, he's basically become a superhero. He gets his cape and the kids are right along there with him on the journey. So every day the kids are getting badges. There's fun coloring activities. There's it's not, I forget what we call it. It's not a sticker chart, but it's like a rewards. Like if you finish 3 of the days, then you get a sticker. And then you get like coupon books. That's what it is. So if a kid completes a certain number of things, they can go to their parents for a 1-song dance party or breakfast at dinner or a walk in the woods or making cookies. And so it's offline fun activities that the families get to do together to gamify and incentivize this training that we've tried to make as fun and as entertaining as possible. So there's actually 2 courses inside of Ziva Kids. One is 4 to 8-year-olds, and that's where Z Bunny is really the star. Yes. But for 8 to 14 or 9 to 14-year-olds, I start with a video that I would just say, just play that like on a road trip, or, if they're brushing their teeth or whenever you let them have screen time, just play this first video, because I do the selling for them. Like I talk about Steph Curry and, what's the really popular singer right now? I can't remember.
I am not the right person to ask.
But basically, I do a lot of name dropping of like all the TikTok people and the YouTube celebrities, like everybody the kids care about. I'm like, hey, legitimately, all the cool kids are doing it. And the world's top performers are doing it. And so we've really framed this tool as a thing that kids can have to help them to unlock their superpowers. So if you're into soccer, it's like, great, this is going to make you better at soccer. If you're into art, cool, this is going to help you tap into your creativity. If you're really into math, well, guess what? This is going to help you get more creative, even with that analytical part of your brain, so that the last thing I want kids to think is like, oh, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I have ADHD, there's something wrong with me. And now I need to meditate to fix what's wrong with me. Like that's the last thing we want kids to feel. And so instead, and I really do believe this about meditation, is that it gives all of us superpowers. It helps us to tap into our full human potential, because the reality is stress is making all of us stupid, sick, and slow. And that is age agnostic. And none of us can afford to be stupid, sick, and slow right now, especially not our children. And so rather than framing this as like, oh, there's something wrong with you, let's fix you, it's like, no, you're perfect. We're swimming in a stressy world. So we're going to help you to unlock those superpowers that are already inside of you. And then you can use them to do whatever you love doing.
Emily, that is amazing, because we talk about ADHD superpowers all the time, and it is about unlocking them and embracing those superpowers. And not everyone is good at everything. So, I think I love the way that you frame that, and it fits actually very perfectly in with very much what we talk about. And the fact that you separate it for ages is fantastic. You actually read my mind, because I was about to ask you that question to say, okay, so we've got this for the younger ones. What do we have for those teens? Because those teens are very impressionable.
They are. And you know what? I actually put a decent amount of science in there. Like I took the kid gloves off. I give them a decent amount of neuroscience. I talk about the studies. I talk about some of the like really cutting edge stuff that we're starting to discover with these mental techniques. And I'm very proud of this. Like Z Bunny sort of sneaks his way in from time to time. And I'm like, Z Bunny, get out of here. These kids are too old for puppets. But he like hangs out for a little while. And then secretly, I think all the older kids really do love Z Bunny, but they just won't admit it. And so it's been a fascinating feedback from parents is that like the older kids are watching their younger siblings' courses, and the younger siblings are watching the older kids' courses. And they might not get all of it, but it's like it's going in, and they're finding different things out of it. I also want people to know that there is a training for adults inside of Ziva Kids, because it's like, especially if you haven't been through a meditation training yourself, I want parents to know that they don't have to be the police. They don't have to get their kid to do it every single day at the exact same day. I want them to understand like the physical and emotional detox that can happen when kids start a practice as powerful as Ziva, which you'd think, well, like my 8-year-old can't be that stressed. But again, we're swimming in a stressy world right now. And when you start to de-excite the nervous system, which is one of the magical things about Ziva, is that we're not just healing the stress from today, we're actually healing all of the accumulated stress from our past. And when we do that, when we engage in that de-excitation process, there is a catharsis that can happen. So I just want parents and support adults to be informed, so that they know that if my kid's crying on day 2, or if they're feeling a little angry, that that's actually like a healthy, encourageable part of the process.
You seem to have thought of it all. I mean, the obstacles to meditation you are tackling right there in the one program, which is amazing. Now, you were talking about the parents. How does having a parent's own practice of meditation really help the children? You touched on it right at the beginning, but I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah. So, our kids really don't care about the words that are coming out of our mouth. Even adult to adult communication, it's only like 13% of it happens verbally through the words. Most of it is coming through our body language, our energy, the sound of our voice, the tone. Like there's so much nonverbal communication that happens. And I think that that's even higher for children because of that prefrontal cortex thing that we were talking about. Language is a decidedly left brain prefrontal cortex phenomenon. And if that's not fully online, then we're really like our other sensory receptors are more open. So point of the story is that kids are learning by watching What are we doing? Not what are we saying? And so it's really important that we walk the walk here and not just talk the talk. And so if your child sees you meditating every single day, twice a day, which I know seems impossible if you're a busy parent, like I know, I have a 3-year-old son. I'm running a 12-person company. I live in New York City. I get it. Like I'm busy too. And it's true. I mean, like, this is the hill I will die on. The busier I am, the more I need meditation. And that is true for you too. Like I today, we just had some terrible news in the media. It's sort of this onslaught of tragedy after tragedy. And I know that everyone's feeling that. And so I was feeling really overwhelmed and really tired. It's the first day of my cycle. And I was just sort of swimming in the collective. And I just finished my meditation and I came out feeling like a new human. Like I feel rested and recharged. And like, I just took the deepest, like 20-year nap for my brain. And that happened just in 15 minutes. Amazing. And so like, it's so good that it's like you're taking an hour and a half nap in 15 minutes. And that's not just me saying it feels like it. It's actually giving you the equivalent of an hour and a half worth of sleep.
Well, I can totally do 15 minutes to get the benefit of an hour and a half. I mean, that's saving me time, isn't it?
That's exactly right. It is. It's saving you time. But if your child is watching you do that every day, they see it. And actually our kids start to protect it for us because they're like, oh, mommy's a lot nicer when she meditates. Oh, daddy's a lot less mean when he meditates. Oh, wow. They're more fun. Like, so actually your kid will be like, mommy, did you meditate yet? And yes, it might still be like annoying and loud and crashing the trucks and, drawing on stuff, but you learn the tricks. Like you set out their favorite toy or you bring out their favorite book, or maybe that's the 15 minutes a day that they get screen time so that you can really replenish yourself. And then oftentimes, even though my son is only 3, he will come and sit in my lap and just suck his thumb. And he like sits with me for when I meditate. And it's beautiful. So cute. And here's the thing, even if they didn't meditate with you, just them seeing you protect that time for yourself, it teaches them boundaries. And here's been a fascinating side effect is that because kids are narcissistic by nature, they have to be to survive. So they think that your sadness is their fault. They think that your anger is their fault. They can't help it. They internalize it. And that's not an advertisement for don't feel your feelings, but it is an advertisement for letting your children see how you regulate and what steps you have in place to practice emotional hygiene. And this was fascinating to me because I noticed that my kids they would say like, oh, I noticed that my mom was in a really bad mood today, but she didn't meditate. So like, that's on her. Like, it's like they could start to equate that, oh, mom didn't do the things that she normally does to feel better. That's not my fault. That's because she wasn't taking care of herself. And so again, we're modeling that behavior of like, if I take time for myself, I'm a better human. And of course we want our children to see that for themselves.
No, I love the way that you explain that. And I think, it makes total sense when when I'm working with families and we're reducing inflammation in the body in other ways, in the diet and the lifestyle and things like that. If the parents aren't also emulating what they want the children to do, it's a lot harder for everyone. And so I think that, I completely agree with you. I just want to keep talking with you. I want to finish talking with you because I actually want to go on and meditate right now. And I need to actually sign up for the adult version of Ziva Kids. What actually inspired you to create Ziva Kids?
Oh, great question. It was actually our number one most requested course, because I've taught about 45,000 adults to meditate, meaning that they have mindfulness, meditation, and manifesting to take with them for life. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is changing my life. I feel so much better. My sleep is better. My anxiety is better. I'm not as depressed. I don't need as much medication. My coffee is less. My alcohol is less. I'm making more money, like all of these things. And then they're like, wait, I want to share this with my kids. Can my kids take this? Can I teach my kids to meditate? And as many times as parents tried to teach their kids to meditate, one, our kids don't really want to learn anything from us in that way. And two, it's tough to teach kids to meditate. I mean, I worked on this thing for 2 years. It was my number one focus. Again, interviewing every expert I could find, writing the scripts, having it vetted, testing. And so it took a lot of time and care because children are so literal, right? It's, you can't, like the first time I made the course, when we did like a beta test, I called, like, instead of stormies, which represent the big feelings, I called them stress monsters. And we shot a whole beta program with these things called stress monsters. And I was like, oh no, Emily, what have I done? Like, you can't call stress monsters. You don't want kids to think that they're monsters because they're feeling angry or because they're feeling their feelings. So we scrapped that and started over. But I created it just because so many parents were asking for it because they knew that they wanted resources for their children. And they were seeing such profound benefits for themselves that they wanted their whole family to experience it. And I've been teaching kids courses in person for about 10 years, but that's only so scalable. And it was just kids who were in New York. And so I would teach maybe like 20 or 25 a year. And it's like, well, that's cute. And it's like a nice hobby for me, but it's not going to make a dent in the mental health crisis that we're facing with our children right now. Just this morning, I was at a launch event for a new like mental health platform for kids and teens. And there was a 30-year child psychologist speaking. And she was like, even before the pandemic, we were already in a mental health crisis. And now we've just really like poured fuel on that fire and highlighted it. And so, as horrible as that is, it's like we were already in it. And now I think people are much more aware of it, which is like we're bringing light into the dark. We're becoming aware of the things that we have to solve. And hopefully it's making people more inspired to actually take action, to invest in these life-changing, brain-changing tools that your child is going to have with them to take with them for life. And one thing that I want to share about, like, well, is 4 too young, or is 6 too young, or will my kid even like keep doing it if they're 8? The thing is, the younger you can teach them, kids are already in it's almost a trance state. They're in actually like an alpha theta state of consciousness until they're 8 years old. And there's a big shift that happens around 7 to 8 years old. And so if you can teach your child before then, it's almost like they get to keep that connection to that everythingness, to that totality, to what I would call cosmic consciousness. It's like they get to bring that with them through their adolescence and into adulthood. And I really think that as parents, we want to keep our children tethered to that source energy.
Definitely. And I loved that you called it life-changing, because it is. It's, if you can give your child this skill, it will go through their whole life with them. And I think back and I think, oh, if only my parents gave me that skill when I was a child, I probably would have I went through a stage where I had quite a bit of anxiety. And if I had had that skill at that stage, it would have been a lot smoother for me. And so the sooner that you can start, the better, I think for everyone. It's like, I suppose, learning a language in a way, isn't it? And when you learn when you're a child, it's a lot easier than when you're an adult. And so it is.
That's a really good point. I'd never put it with the language analogy, but yeah, your brain changes. Like, we're sponges with language. Mm-hmm. And similarly, it's like when we're pre-8 years old, it's like we're more, this isn't totally accurate, but the simple way of saying is that we're more in our right brain. We're more in that sort of like open-eyed awareness, that sense of presence, that sense of nowness, versus once that prefrontal cortex starts to come online, it's more past future, right? We start to make memories, and that's good and well. We need that to function as an adult. And there's beauty in the simultaneity. Like, if you look at a human brain, it splits right down the middle. It's 50-50. And I don't think that nature makes mistakes. I don't think that nature would have given us 50-50 if it wanted us to use 90-10. And yet that's what most adults are doing. We're 90% in that left brain, only 10% in the right. And it's like, well, what if we were to really balance it out? Then we're creative and critical, masculine and feminine, past, future, and present moment.
Beautiful. I just love the way that you explain all of this. And, I can just feel your enthusiasm and your passion for this. And that's how I feel about what I do as well. And, I think the world out there needs to see that. And so I'm so glad that you're on today. I bet as you've been going through this journey and sharing this and teaching all these children, I mean, what's it been like to really witness those benefits of meditation in the children around you, but also like the probably hundreds and hundreds of children that you've been able to help across the USA or even the world?
Yeah, I mean, we knew it would be cute. Like we were like excited to see feedback but I don't think anybody on my team was ready for like just how emotional it's been. Like to get photos and videos of kids like dancing with Z Bunny and meditating with Z Bunny and shaking out their stormies and dancing to the theme song and sending us their coloring photos of them and Z Bunny and writing out their stormies and how they're feeling. Like it's all so adorable and so moving. But there was one story where a woman shared that her son had not slept through the night. He had not slept in his own bed through the night in 10 years. And the week after he finished Ziva Kids, he slept through the night all night long and in his own bed. And so now this poor sleep deprived mother and this child is actually getting like the thing that their brain needs so desperately to heal, to grow, is sleep. And he hadn't gotten that in a decade. And so that was one of the ones where my team and I were just like weeping, crying. So beautiful.
But it's not just life-changing for him, it's life-changing for the mom and for the family as well. Sleep is so critical, especially to our kids with ADHD. Yeah. Their brain needs that sleep, that renew, that repair, and that growth. And so when you don't have a child that's sleeping, it just exacerbates ADHD symptoms completely. So you've given us so much to think about. Are you working on any other projects at the moment?
Yes. So we are developing a whole new thing. It's around like alchemizing your emotions. It's about getting really clear on where you are and then using tools to not bypass, not pretend like they aren't there, but to actually alchemize them into the state that you want to be in. And I've actually been really studying quite a bit about sacred sexuality. And so I'm sort of in this world of like, can I be both a kids meditation teacher and teach sacred sexuality at the same time? And the answer is, I don't know. But, it's like, where do we think kids came from? So I'm going to hold that that's a possibility for the planet, but we'll see.
It is totally a possibility. And, I think for sure, where did they come from? I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, that's really, really interesting. I can't wait to, watch that space. Emily, any sort of just parting tips to really, or parting advice to parents just starting out, in training getting their kids involved in meditation and learning? Any parting words?
Yeah, I would say that, be curious. Like I would not go in guns a-blazing and be like, oh, it's a terrible turn of phrase right now, but I would not go in with your agenda of saying like, this is what I think you should do. What I would instead do is be curious about what's your child into? What are they really passionate about right now? And then say, hey, did you know that I just learned that this thing could actually help you be better at your video games, or this thing might help you better enjoy dance class, or, I know you have a spelling bee coming up. When you feel sort of nervous before the spelling bee, wouldn't it be cool if you felt like you had a superpower in your back pocket? Hey, I just learned about this thing. It seems super fun. There's this hilarious bunny. Do you want to watch one episode with me? And then I would sort of like watch with them for the first episode, especially the younger the child is, so they feel like it's something you can do together, versus just going in and being like, hey, you're stressed. We need to fix it. You're doing this thing.
Emily, they were wonderful words. I think the parents out there that are listening today, they need to press pause, they need to rewind, and they need to write down those actual words so they can reuse them at home with their children. Because I know parents are probably thinking, I need Emily to come to my house.
Well, you know what? Like Z Bunny and I have made some adorable videos. They're like joke videos where your kid can come and learn, meet me, meet Z Bunny, and then make an educated decision for themselves as to whether or not they would like to go on this life-changing journey with us.
Amazing. Well, we'll definitely have to drop those links in the show notes below. But Emily, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing your knowledge, your passion, your enthusiasm, your experience. I mean, I could go on and on and on with all of our listeners. So can you please tell listeners where they can find and follow you online?
Yeah, so we're all over the internet, but I say the best place is zivameditation.com/kids. That's where all the kids resources are. And Ziva is Ziva. And then we're all over social media, just at Ziva Meditation. I would say Instagram is our most active platform, but we also have a community on Facebook where, my team and I are in there every day supporting people. So just search Ziva meditation and me and Z Bunny will pop on up.
Fantastic. Thank you once again so much for joining us. Listeners, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Soaring Child. I'm Dana Kay, your ADHD health practitioner. Keep on thriving. Thank you for listening to the Soaring Child podcast today. To learn more about how to help your child with ADHD soar using natural strategies, visit our website at ADHDthriveinstitute.com and follow us on social media at ADHD Thrive Institute.